Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition. His name is Zach Lyons, also known as at FWordsPod on Twitter. My name is Braden Gall. You get to me on Twitter at Braden Gall. And if you have any questions at all about any topics today on the show, can't imagine that you might, make sure you jump into the comments
nothing
section.
to talk about.
Nothing to talk about. It's only an unprecedented week in NFL general managing history. And the complete direction and future of the entire franchise is now dictated on what is taking place this week for your Tennessee Titans. No big deal. No big deal. Zach,
earth-shattering, timeline-altering decisions were made this week.
It is. It's exactly what happened. And so, obviously, I guess we'll talk about the Jags game. But I think as you and Mike Herndon, by the way, check out Football and Other F Words this week. You guys did a great show. Lots of meandering conversations and details and minutia about all the different things that could happen with the Titans front office. Awesome stuff by you guys. So make sure you go check that out. But man, it's hard to focus on the Jags game.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, the injury report, you got struggles there, and we'll get into it all. But it's like, do you really care about the fucking Jags game at this point? It's like almost fast forward to the offseason, because that's what it feels like right now. Of course, I've been on that train since like the Bills lost.
That's true.
Fast forward to that offseason even more so now.
I guess we can talk about the Heisman finalists at some point. We can do that.
Sure.
I suppose at the very end.
We may got like 10 minutes for those two topics, the Jaguars game and the Heisman game.
There's a lot of stuff that we've got to talk about with Jon Robinson being removed, and there's a lot of angles of it. There's a lot of what have yous and ins and outs and lots of stuff to get to. So, of course, we want your involvement. Make sure you jump into the comment section there, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. We want to interact with you guys. So anything you guys want to talk about or direction you want to take this, again, we will talk about the Jags and the Titans game. We will talk a touch on the Heisman finalists and why Hendon Hooker is not there. But again, this is all going to be about the future of the franchise for the Tennessee Titans.
And I have a question for the viewers that I want them to answer in the comment section where we're talking about Jon Robinson later. It's something that someone else brought up to me, and I'm like, whoa, I think you're right. So I want to see what the listeners think. So get your keyboard ready. Get the chat ready.
Get the keyboards ready. We got a lot of things to discuss. I also have a question. My brother-in-law, by the way, brother-in-law Ben W. asked me an interesting question while we were driving around, because he was here and it kind of all happened, and then we started talking about it. I had to drive him to the airport, and he asked me a really interesting question about Mike Vrabel that I have not heard asked, and you and I have kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to ask you about Mike Vrabel's coming up in just a second. So before we do anything that, of course, Kingston Group and Pharmacy are two great sponsors here on the show. Make sure you check out Kingston Group, buildkg.com, of course, Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. If you're looking to remodel your front office, like I do, I got an office in the front of the house. Go check out Kingston Group, buildkg.com. They are not some random collection of general contractors. This is a nose-to-tail operation, okay? These guys, they do everything from the beginning to the end. They lay it all out for you. They tell you exactly what's happening. They know exactly what's going on, and they would absolutely draft players that don't go to the Senior Bowl. So Kingston Group, buildkg.com. And, of course, the Pharmacy right over there on McFerrin Avenue in East Nashville. Great place to go grab lunch. You want to take the family. Great place to grab dinner on a Friday night. Great place to go have cocktails after work. I don't know, if you've got some free time because you just got fired from being a general manager, maybe you can go hang out.
We already tried to get Jon Robinson to go to our sponsor on Football and Other F Words. You can't send him to another sponsor. Listen.
He's got a lot of time.
When he generates a depression and he generates an eating disorder, then he can go. Wow. Then he can go to a pharmacy and just shovel in all the burgers, much like that. What's that guy on Popeye from the old cartoon show that would always eat the burgers? He could be that guy.
So is this intra-pod burger rivalry?
If you're drinking your sorrows away, we've already used that one on F Words. So,
okay.
If he becomes an alcoholic, then binge drinks, then he can go to both places. Who am I to judge?
No, I just think that he has to eat lunch every day. So like you could just alternate and go to both. Like you still have to
just
eat.
Liquid lunches.
Or it's all liquid at this point.
Yeah.
So again, Pharmacy, East Nashville, great place to go grab dinner, lunch, bring the kids. You can get out of there for less than $50. You got the soda rail, you got locally sourced beers, you got homemade sausages. What else do you need in life, Zach? What else do you need?
There is nothing more than you need in life than because we were talking. There was a big discussion to get a little bit off topic, but
bring it back to
nothing happened. But bring it back to Pharmacy. Is that there was this thing that pops up and is like, it's one of those pick 2 for the rest of your life and all the other ones have to go. And some guy picked Domino's and I think KFC or something. And I'm thinking,
like
you
fast food
limit
choices?
yourself. You limit yourself if you choose those 2, because then you don't have anywhere else to go. But pharmacy, you have all the options. You got salmon burgers, you got sausages, you got vegan options, you got everything that you need over at the pharmacy.
They even key burgers if you want that. So there you have it. Let's start the show with Joshua. Fantastic article on Broadway Sports today, Zach. Very well written. Amazing job.
Thank you.
Many people are talking about it.
It is. It actually is. It actually just a petition just went up to make it free because right now it's behind a paywall. It'll be free tomorrow technically, but
put it behind. Keep it behind that paywall, baby.
All right. People love the article.
What's the headline of the article? This would be a great jumping off point.
This is going to be a good transition because it's 48 hours later. Thoughts on Titans firing Jon Robinson, and listen. You can see most of my thoughts on how the Titans got to that decision. Where do they go from here on the article, BroadwaySportsMedia.com. Get an insight. If you put in the code Insider, 99 cents your first month. Like
it's
just pay
$1
99 cents to read the article at this point. Like I sent it to a few people that complain. Well, unfortunately, it's behind a paywall. Well,
it's $1.
Fortunate enough for you. It's only unfortunate if you allow yourself to let it be unfortunate.
Would you re-sign Jeff Swain for $1, 99 cents?
There you go.
Would you do that?
But this is what we're going to talk about overarching. But first, people have heard my initial thoughts and reactions with Mike Herndon. We did it live shortly after the announcement. Then, of course, you can hear that on the pod version. You can also go to YouTube at BroadwaySportsMedia.com and the Broadway Sports YouTube page. But here, this is a football show. It's a totally different podcast.
Yeah.
With a totally different co-host who may have totally different opinions. So I ask you, Braden, it's been 48 hours. What was your initial reaction and where are you at now?
It has changed. It has evolved. And I do think this is why it's important when major news happens in life or in sports that you allow yourself some time to think through all of the stuff and all the different angles and all the different reasons why something could happen. Because my initial reaction, and it doesn't change Jon Robinson is probably, and I know this as someone who, I say this as someone who calls Floyd Reese a friend. Jon Robinson's the best general manager in Titans franchise history.
You can't argue with anybody otherwise. I mean, you can.
Right.
Your argument is literally invalid because, and we'll get to that later. And we talked about it on Football and Other.
But so I'm clearing my throat here because my first reaction was just utter shock and awe because every single good thing that has happened to this franchise in the last 7 years, you have to start with the conversation with Jon Robinson. Now, is Mike Vrabel more valuable to this team? Of course he is. It's a no-brainer. If it was a choice about one or the other, and we'll get to that, it's obvious which one you choose. You take the awesome coach because they're much harder to find. Full stop. Like, that's it. But Mike Vrabel's not here. He doesn't exist. Ryan Tannehill's not here. Every single good player on this team that you see out there making plays is here because of Jon Robinson. The franchise, 7 winning seasons. I don't have to do all of this, but I feel the need to. So my first reaction was, this is shocking because there's so much risk involved in this. And that part of my opinion has not changed. What has changed is why it happened. What I have sort of worked through over the last couple of days, now 2 days later, was why isn't Jon Robinson the right guy to trust to fix the offensive line, to trust to rebuild the roster, this is all the stuff he's already done. He's already done all of it for your franchise. And he did a great job of it. Great. The best in franchise history. So why is he not still the right guy to keep doing it? That was my first reaction. I am now a little bit more on seeing the slow buildup and degradation of decision-making over the course of, I'm still trying to pinpoint the exact moment. Maybe it's the Isaiah Wilson pick. I don't exactly know. I'm still trying to figure out the exact moment where I think it sort of started to go the other direction.
I could tell you when.
You tell me where you've pinpointed the spot.
When he let Jack Conklin leave in free agency instead of doing the 5th-year option, that set a precedent. First off, they've been trying to fix that mistake for 3 fucking seasons. Okay, they've been they've been trying to chase for 3 seasons. That also set the precedent that he does not use his fifth-year options very often. In fact, he's only used it once on any of them. And you can argue whether he should have or shouldn't have on certain players. But the fact that he maybe shouldn't have used his fifth-year option means that he did a terrible job drafting that player in the first place and evaluating that player in the first place. So to me, letting Jack Conklin go was the domino. Now, I could go back even earlier, but
that was at the end of the 2019 season, following the AFC Championship game, right?
Listen, don't have to draft Isaiah Wilson. If you would have done the fifth-year option on Conklin, bought yourself another year worth of negotiating and testing out whether he can give you a full season, because there were injury concerns. And it's kind of like a trial period. Like, that is a free trial period that he basically threw in the trash. That McAfee virus protection, he's just like, no, I'm just going to throw it in the trash, even I can use it every time. So that is the point. There's no Isaiah Wilson if there's Jack Conklin. So if you're going to say Isaiah Wilson is the point, then you have to go back. Why did they draft Isaiah Wilson in the first place?
Well, I think that's valid. I think that's a fair argument on your part. They could have taken a really good player with that pick, though, and then then it's not Jack Conklin. And again, to your point, medical issues there. I'm okay kind of with anybody pointing out a specific time. This had people saying it was the A.J. Brown trade is wrong, in my opinion.
It's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yes.
Like the repercussions of the A.J. Brown trade.
It is. A.J. Brown is a piece of this.
Mm-hmm.
What it is a cumulative effect of decision-making that had lost the confidence of ownership and, in my opinion, the head football coach. Where we're at a crossroads, Zach. We're at a crossroads, says Mike Vrabel after the game. We're at a crossroads. And what the thing that has changed in me is it's not that I didn't know Isaiah Wilson and Dylan Radins and Caleb Farley and the A.J. Brown trade and the offensive line shuffling that you have wanted all season. They do it in the defensive backfield. It's not that all of that, I didn't know all of that. You just start to think about the cumulative effect of all these decisions. And my opinion today is a little bit more understanding of Amy Adams Strunk making the decision, if in fact she solely made the decision, which I still think is up for debate. I'm a little bit more okay with the decision. The thing that has not changed at all in 48 hours is the amount of risk involved in this move. And that you have the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And Jon Robinson is the devil you know. You kind of know what you're going to get. You know what he's good at. You know what he's not good at. We kind of have a feel for it. And he could be significantly better than anyone else they go hire and put in that role. He might be. He might not be. And it's huge. It's a huge risk. And I'm going to use a college football analogy because that's what I do, right? Everything's college football. Mark Richt at Georgia won 10 games every single year for the better part of 15 seasons. He recruited top 10 recruiting classes every single year for 15 seasons. He was a very, very good coach. One of the best in Georgia history. Top 10 recruiting classes and 10-2 wasn't good enough for Georgia. But they were shooting for a really tiny bullseye above that, right? They're shooting for 12-0 and top 5 classes. And they happened to hit the bullseye with Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart happened to be the guy that could take them from 10-2 to Nick Saban in Alabama. And that is what Amy Adams Strunk and Mike Vrabel are attempting to do in this decision. Jon Robinson's pretty damn good. They are attempting to go up a notch. And that is a very risky proposition. It could work.
I don't think it's just a notch, though. I think there is we've talked about this on the show this whole time, for this whole season, that there is a considerable gap between where the Titans are at roster-wise versus where the upper echelon of the NFL is at. And that's basically because that he has really neglected. Let's be honest here. Now, I know he's addressed it, and I know he's drafted A.J. Brown, who, guess what's no longer on the team. And I know he drafted Corey Davis, who no longer is on the team. But there is a myriad of other decisions that he has made at the wide receiver position dating back to 2016, Braden. And
don't you talk about Rashard Matthews that way.
And we'll get to this in a minute. But in my mind, it's not about just, obviously, Super Bowl. But to get to the Super Bowl, there's 2 or 3 levels this team has to jump through to really get to the Super Bowl and be considered Super Bowl contenders.
That's fine.
Stay contending.
I'm good with you saying it's not just one notch. What I'm saying is, though, going from number 1 seed in the AFC and multiple time division champion and 7 consecutive winning seasons, like you're shooting at a real small bullseye.
Well, I'll say this. What about look at what the Titans did after 2017? Win a playoff game on the road, fired their head coach. Now, I've heard. Go ahead.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, you fire the head coach and you got better. And you know who fired and made that decision to do all that was Amy Adams Strunk. You know who was involved in hiring the head coach, Jon Robinson and Amy Adams Strunk. Now you got Mike Vrabel. That turned into a thing. Now you have Mike Vrabel, who surpassed and outperformed his counterpart in the front office by a wide margin. Let's be honest here. It's not even close. Except
in the playoffs.
Except in the playoffs. But that's
Jon Robinson. You can't blame him for that one.
Well, yeah, you can because it's Ryan Tannehill, right? Throwing interceptions. Who got Ryan Tannehill? Anyway.
Well, so can I address the malarkey thing real fast?
What's there to address?
I think it's a bullshit comparison. I don't think it's even close. I think fans saying, "Look what happened with Malarkey and Vrabel." It's not even close. Malarkey was a stopgap, retread, proven commodity. He'd been fired previously. He was a coach that we knew exactly who he was, with no upside whatsoever. That is not the same as Robinson.
Listen, Robinson has no upside whatsoever either anymore. I mean, let's be honest. Let's have an honest assessment about Jon Robinson. The reason why this team keeps losing in the playoffs is because it does not have the players it needs to win. He is in charge of the players that need to win. He hit a plateau. And unlike Bud Adams, Amy Adams Strunk decided, hey, I'm not going to let Floyd Reese stick around, and I'm not going to pull this team downward while it's still sort of competing, but it's not, and then create horrible cap situations, which this team has been up against the cap quite a bit. And paying for players like Bud Dupree, who are good, but they're overpaying for him. And I am a big Bud Dupree guy.
Yeah, you're a huge Dupree guy.
He is overpaid. But so in my mind, I'm thinking, now you got Mike Vrabel, now you got Amy Adams Strunk, and they're picking their GM. If you think that Mike Vrabel's outperformed his old GM, now he gets to choose his GM. That's how I view it.
And that is it. That ultimately is the only piece of analysis that actually matters. This is all now on Mike Vrabel.
Mm-hmm.
It's all on Mike Vrabel. And we got a lot of questions in the comments, so let's get to some of these. One of them is, it mentions the Downing DUI.
No.
Nothing to do with any of this.
Unless it comes out that he shoved a beer bong down Downing's throat and bullied him into taking and drinking whatever alcohol he was and said, hey, you have to drive this car 100 miles per hour all the way home, and then you have to get pulled over and all that kind of stuff, then it has nothing to do. Kyle Downing is a grown-ass man who made his own grown-ass man choices, and he has to live with those consequences. It's utterly unbelievable. I cannot believe even Stillman has brought this up and turned this into a narrative where other people are talking about it. It is fucking ridiculous.
Zach, I'm not even kidding. I was just at a charity event for the charity that I work for, and a couple of the guys were like, do you think it has anything to do with like all this other stuff? I'm like, look, if there is anything that is sordid about this, like there's an incident somewhere or something that Jon Robinson did, then all of our analysis goes out the window, and we have to address that particular issue. But as of taping right now, none of that has a fact. There's nothing there. And he says,
but if they were drinking together, well, I bet you everybody on the plane was drinking together.
It has nothing to do with
you
Todd
don't think
Downing's
Mike Vrabel's
DUI.
Cracking a cold one if he sees someone else has one? Like, let's give me a break. And
why wouldn't it be on Mike Vrabel? Why wouldn't it be? Mike Vrabel's the one who has Todd Downing here.
And let me tell you, if they were all drinking together, who do you think would be the scapegoat in this situation? The general manager or the shitty ass offensive coordinator?
Right. So that's one question. There's another question about.
Sorry, Brian. I don't want
we
you
love
to
you,
think I'm
Brian.
like specifically yelling at you. It's just that like it's something I heard Jared Stillman talk about yesterday, and I heard him on Joe and Robbie and Rick's Row this morning, and it just got up my crawl. The shit rolls downhill.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what I'm trying to say.
There's a couple major.
Could he have gotten drunk and dropped his trowel? And that maybe that is the whole situation.
That's what I'm saying.
That it totally could be, but it has nothing to do with Downing's DUI.
If Jon Robinson did something completely inappropriate or illegal and is the reason he got fired, then all of the analysis about his ability to be the general manager goes out the window in 2 seconds.
Listen, now let me throw out something. Now, Jon Robinson was not mentioned to be in the car with Todd Downing, but if Jon Robinson was driving the car and then him and Todd Downing switched places, sure. That is a totally different situation than what we're talking about.
All right. That to me, that would qualify as something so outside of the realm of the job description.
Yeah,
this is about two things. This is about your ability to build a roster in the NFL and your potential disagreements with the head coach. The power
I don't
struggle.
think it's potential. I think it's
exactly. Those are
this is about.
Those are the only two things this is about. Now, Joshua asked a question for you guys. Looking at this roster, how enticing on a scale from 1 to 10 would you say the Titans general manager position is in the NFL? And I would say, first of all, like Amy Adams Strunk has said, it's sort of a double-edged sword. Clearly, she wants to win big and is willing to spend to do it. That's a positive. She also did something that no other NFL owner has done in 22 years in the NFL, which is fire a GM in the middle of the season before Christmas time.
Well,
so
it's not the middle of the season. It's
sorry. Yeah. But like, it's not happened since like 2000 or something that this has taken place. The timing of this is extremely bizarre to me.
Oh yeah.
So that's a part of it.
It does have a lot to do with here's what I think. And I haven't heard anybody talk about this. Braden, I'm sure in the radio business in your career that you've gone to work dreading to see possibly a co-host, possibly a producer, or possibly another employee at your work and said, man, I just really do not want to go in and see that guy. And you have to work with him, right? You have to talk to him. You have to do this.
It's life. Yeah.
And your bad attitude or your negative attitude or dreading that situation infects everybody else, right? So if Vrabel and Jon Robinson seriously had disagreements and Mike Vrabel's having to get up there week after week while Jon Robinson avoids the press all season long, excuse me, having to answer all these questions for what Jon Robinson has done, then he's probably tired. He's probably pissed off. And when he goes into work and has to go into a meeting or come out of a meeting with Jon Robinson, it probably affects everybody else's life.
Okay. Why don't you clear your throat? Take a little sip of water. I'll answer Joshua's question, which I think it's pretty attractive because Mike Vrabel's a head coach, so you're gonna win games. You got a pretty good defense. Nashville's a great place to work and live, and the Titans are willing to spend money. So I think it's again, you're in a good division where you can, if you just have a moderately good football team, you're probably for the foreseeable future going to be the favorite to win the division, at least for a couple of years. So I think it's a really good job. Also, there's only 32 of them. So every single one of them is actually extremely enticing. I do think who ends up being picked, because I don't think anybody actually knows who the real candidates are. We can speculate about names, but like no one's actually reporting so-and-so is an interview and so-and-so is going to be interested and so-and-so wants the job. We know that John Stretch would want the job. If it is in fact him, we know this was exclusively about Mike Vrabel wanting this to happen, in my opinion. And the fact that Amy Adams Strunk has not spoken publicly about this, if it is all her decision, then she needs to be the one answering questions about this. She has to be the one calling the press conference instead of putting your head coach out there to answer a bunch of questions that he is not supposed to have the authority to answer. To me, the imagery, the optics, PR, whatever you want to call it, to me, all this says is that this is almost a Mike Vrabel decision. And that's speculation on my part, but That is what this looks like, is that Mike Vrabel did not want Jon Robinson on his team anymore. And that's it. And if you had to choose between the two, we all agree that Amy Adams Strunk made the right decision.
I think there's a lot to it. And I think that the comment that Vrabel made was that he kind of found out when everybody else found out. It was essentially what he said. He was not consulted. Miss Amy told him, and that was that. I think that's totally complete, utter bullshit. I am not buying that. I'm not buying that he was not consulted or asked his opinion whatsoever about firing Jon Robinson. Now, whether he instigated it or not, I don't know.
Wouldn't it be like completely mismanaging an NFL roster to not talk to your head coach about it?
Right. Yeah. That's I just don't buy that. And
yeah.
It's kind of like here's where I'm at on this whole, what did Amy know? What didn't she know? Because, of course, the Schefter report came out and people can't understand English and misconstrue all the words that were said. She felt like she wasn't a part enough of the big conversations. She wasn't really involved in them, and she wanted to be involved. Okay, that's fine. You're the owner. Get involved.
Yeah, right.
Let me say that first off. That you are the owner. If you want to be involved, you need to make yourself involved. You need to be present, and you need to be at the meetings and all that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if you can't be there and you ask your GM, hey, how's the AJ Brown stuff going? He's going, oh, it's pretty good. You need to be asking some follow-up questions, right? Like, here's where I'm at on what I think actually happened. Because people are like, well, she was in the room. She knew AJ Brown was going to get traded. I think that she knew that the AJ Brown conversations were stalling. And then, boom, right there in front of you, he's making a trade. He's finishing up the trade, right? Yeah. He's not making a trade. He's calling him, and he's on the phone, and you only hear one half of the conversation, right? He's calling Howie Roseman on the phone. He says, okay, that stuff we talked about the other week, let's go ahead and pull the trigger. Yep. That's how. It's not like Jon Robinson called Howie Roseman in 3 minutes, did a full fucking trade. Right. Like, come on, people.
Right.
You know, like she probably was just
and got the contract signed. Yeah, like the new deal done.
And then people are like, well, she shook his hand and she was smiling. Yeah, there's fucking cameras in there. What's she supposed to do? Right. I mean, she's not Mike Vrabel, right? I mean, like men are very reactive. Women are like.
You mean we're the emotional sex? Because I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Sort of, but like what I'm saying is that she's smiling, but underneath or probably under her breath, she's telling Jon Robinson, "This better fucking work. This better not fucking backfire."
Yeah, exactly.
This better not fucking backfire, Jon.
Exactly.
Like that's what she's doing. Like
I'm gonna cut off your to win a Super Bowl too, buddy.
So like this idea, I feel like Miss Amy did feel out of the loop, but I also feel that some of that is her fault for not staying in the loop. And that could be why she's buying a 300-acre land to be here, be more present especially during construction, especially during all that.
333 acres at $42,000 per acre in Williamson County. Where can I sign me up, dude? Like $42,000 an acre. That's incredibly cheap in Williamson County right now. So Occam's razor is the theory that
the guy who needs a copy editor can't be the guy who slanders others' understanding of English. I don't have a copy editor. I literally write my stuff and post it.
I know. I think he's saying you need a copy editor.
Oh, I need one?
I would argue every single writer in this city needs better copy editors, but that's just my personal opinion. Here's the other thing. Occam's razor is the theory that the most obvious thing that has happened is probably the thing that happened. The most obvious answer is probably what actually happened, which is we had 2.5 years of questionable decision-making that eroded the confidence that Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams-Strunk had in the guy making personnel decisions that has resulted in an offensive line with questions and the receiving core with questions and draft picks that don't work and an AJ Brown trade. Like, the most obvious answer is probably the answer, which is that Vrabel and Adams just didn't trust him anymore to be in the position he was in. And so they fired him. That's it. Like, it's probably not any more complicated than that. And you don't need to work yourself. You don't need to work yourself into
conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Like that stuff's probably not, any of that stuff probably doesn't matter. Now, how much say did Mike Vrabel have? I think we will learn based on who eventually gets the job. And you use the phrase veto power on F words. Mm-hmm. If Mike Vrabel has veto power and stretches the GM or they hire somebody from in-house, then it's, to me, that is the signal that Mike Vrabel was far more involved in the decision-making than he's letting on. And I'm okay with that. Like, again, this is all on Vrabel.
Yeah.
The whole future of the franchise now is on Vrabel and Strunk. Full stop.
Yeah. I here's how I felt now 48 hours later and
how do you
Well, I mean, there's a lot that I feel. I'm a feeling guy, but I look at it and I go, I have probably been one of the biggest Jon Robinson apologists on the internet, on the airways. Me and Mike, for sure.
Me too.
And listen, I do think that Jon Robinson is the best general manager the Titans have, and I did always think that he was like a top 5, top 10 GM. But I think wins really inflated the job that he did. And I get that, okay, well, you can't have wins without players, and he got the players. But I think I look back because it's not revisionist history, but it is kind of revisionist history, right? Like, and I know you want to talk about that, but there were signs even in 2016 that this guy undervalued the wide receiver position, right? And we all just chose to kind of ignore it and kind of say, well, next year. Oh, next year we'll find one. And it took really to 2019 to find the alpha. And then he fucked up the negotiations, as well as A.J. Brown took advantage of him fucking up the negotiations.
Takes two. Yep.
It takes two. And he's gone, right? And yeah, Burks is probably that guy, but he's also got to stay healthy, right? Like all the other rookie wide receivers are staying healthy, but he's the only one having issues apparently staying healthy. But that's
I mean, it's not his fault that he
right.
took a
but
hit
I mean,
to the head,
like it's just luck. There's some kind of luck around here.
Yeah.
But you look at 2015's pass catchers. Okay, the year before Jon Robinson took over, Kendall Wright, Harry Douglas, Justin Hunter, Dorial Green-Beckham, Trey McBride.
God.
In 2016. It became Kendall Wright, Harry Douglas, Andre Johnson, Rashard Matthews, Tajay Sharp. This should have been a huge flashing neon sign that says, hey, our GM, Jon Robinson, does not know how to evaluate wide receiver talent, and he has a rookie a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, and he chose not to build around him. He chose a 5th-round pick, the highest guy that he chose to draft on, and he chose a perennial number 2 wide receiver to try to come in and be the number 1 wide receiver. This was a sign that we all should have known that. I did not recognize it at the time, and I'll be quite honest.
Well,
I would sign.
I think that's a little. I think the Corey Davis draft pick maybe is more for that for me. I think the roster was in such bad shape when he took over. Again, 5-27. Everybody knows. I think he prioritized certain things. I think that's pretty revisionist to say that. I mean, Rashard Matthews had like 2 of his best seasons here. I would say that they brought in Ben Jones at that point. Like they had to fix everything. So I just think they didn't prioritize the wide receiver position.
That's what I'm saying. That's an issue.
But I think you have to build trenches out first. And that's, again, I think I'm okay with that decision. Drafting Derrick Henry, drafting Kevin Byard, like drafting Jack Conklin and signing
and Kevin Dodd and Austin Johnson.
No, listen, there's misses, but every GM misses.
Every GM though, when they typically the good GMs when they get a quarterback on a rookie contract, they do everything they can to build around that rookie. They whether it's offensive line like they have done over the Cincinnati Bengals, whether it is and getting all kinds of pass catchers for Joe Burrow. And then you have, I'm forgetting somebody that
Justin Herbert. I don't know,
no, but I mean, you build around your rookie quarterback, and he didn't do that. Now, unfortunately, Marcus had other issues, and Marcus is already getting benched by Arthur Smith for the second time.
His arm died in Miami.
Yeah, but he never really did aggressively build around his rookie quarterback. So either he didn't like Marcus or whatever.
So I mean,
but my thing is that this is over his stretch. He's always undervalued the wide receiver position, and that is an issue.
That's totally fair. I don't think there's any reason for us to go back.
That's who I was looking for. I don't know why I forgot
Jalen Hurts. Yeah.
And Josh Allen and Tua.
I don't see any benefit or value to going back and relitigating all the decisions.
Well, I'm not relitigating. What I'm saying is that this has opened my eyes. I was drinking two-tone Kool-Aid.
Okay.
And I recognize that I made a mistake when I put my full support behind Jon Robinson because I solely focused on wins and didn't really dive deep into the decisions that he was making. Because you look at this, here's what I'm saying. But that's how you got to look at it, right? It's not revisionist history.
But is he the greatest general manager and they had 7 straight winning seasons? And
yeah,
they were
but
a
I
one
mean,
seed,
isn't that really a low bar to clear? I mean, look at the general managers that they've had.
No, I agree. But I'm saying
that's the thing. It's like winning the AFC South. Oh, wow. You won the AFC South in 2022. Big whoop.
This is a really weird argument because I'm defending past Zach against future present Zach. I'm saying past Zach was right. I don't think anyone was wrong to say that Jon Robinson did a brilliant job taking a franchise from complete irrelevancy and 5-27 to hiring Mike Vrabel,
But it could have been better, is what I'm saying. This could have
maybe.
been. This
but
could
that's
have
the
been
way you fire him.
This could, yeah. That's what I'm saying. He got fired because he plateaued. And when people talk about his draft classes, they only talk about the 2019 and 2022 versus the 2021, 2020. They don't bring up the 2016 through 2018, which is really where your depth issues have all started from.
No,
your depth issues right now stem from the decisions they've made and not keeping certain players from 2016 to 2019 and not drafting certain players from 2016, 2018. Those 3 drafts have just as much cascading effect as anything else that he has done.
I mean, Jack Conklin, Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, David Long.
Jack Conklin's not here.
I'm just saying
David Long's
they were all
2019. You can't include him. Derrick Henry.
Okay.
Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard's what you got.
Okay, those are the best safety and best running back in franchise history. You're not going to hit on every pick. You're not going to hit on every pick.
That's 2 out of a lot. Right? I mean, you got to.
Jayon Brown was a hell of a player for this team, and then he got hurt. So again, this is what I don't like. I think we have to agree on certain things, which is that he did an excellent job. He plateaued. Amy and Mike felt like it's time to move on.
He plateaued because of these draft classes, though, Braden.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with that. But hits and misses, we can go on and on and on. I think every GM in the NFL has a bunch of hits and a bunch of misses, and I get all of that. What I am far more interested in is what does this team look like moving forward? And here's the revisionist history part. And it happened with Ryan Tannehill when everyone was like, "Oh, I told you, Ryan, they should have gone to Ryan Tannehill." No one knew that Ryan Tannehill was going to have the greatest season in Titans history or the greatest season in Ryan Tannehill's career. The regression was very obvious and has happened. But no one was like, if you think this is a great move and it turns out to be disastrous, which is very possible, you don't get to change your mind. And vice versa. If you think this is a terrible move and it works out for the Titans and they win a Super Bowl, you don't get to change your opinion.
Without saying you're wrong. You have to admit that you were wrong. I was wrong. Yes. What I'm saying is I was wrong to just sip the NJ Rob We Trust Kool-Aid instead of being a little bit more critical, because really, honestly, I want everybody to woosah for a moment. This is my question. This is the question I'm going to ask everybody. Woosah, take a deep breath. If you're listening, if you're watching, take a deep breath. Breathe with me.
1, 2, 3, 4. Out 1, 2, 3.
If Ryan Tannehill hadn't bucked his career trend and been what he was in 2019 and been what he was in 2020, would Jon Robinson have a second contract?
I think it is a great question that I have spent a lot, to your point, rethinking your own sort of perceptions on this, because I am also in J. Rob We Trust. He's done a brilliant job, blah, 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 blah. If they don't get extraordinarily lucky with Ryan Tannehill doing that thing that no one thought was possible, that no one thought there was any statistical indication was possible, are we still having this conversation today, or did we have this conversation 2 years ago?
Exactly.
And I actually think there is a lot to that question and to that point. I think there's a lot to that, because the outlier for Ryan Tannehill is not the Cincinnati game. The outlier for Ryan Tannehill statistically was 2019 and 2020. So I agree with you. I think that's a very real question, and it might have bought Jon Robinson 2 years.
And look, general managing is a lot of luck and a lot of unlucky. It's a lot. Yeah. It's both, because I mean, you could have known if you would have done branched out of your research, probably that, okay, maybe Isaiah Wilson is really not a personality fit. You may not know that he would have gone crazy, but he could have gone crazy on someone else's team. You maybe could have looked at the medicals a little bit harder on Caleb Farley. Now, I still believe that Caleb Farley was a good pick. I'm never going to change that. That is called revisionist history. If I were to say, oh, that's a terrible pick, it's a terrible result, but I think some of that is luck, right? I mean, because he just never put it together. Now, it's unluckiness. And then you look at A.J. Brown falling, you look at Jeffrey Simmons falling and turning and overcoming his injuries, and you look at Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is probably the luckiest thing. Now, you also make some of your own bad decisions that aren't predicated on luck. And I go back to 2 trades that I still today find them to be more egregious than the A.J. Brown trade. Trading a 5th for Dennis Staley.
I knew it.
and trading up for Des Fitzpatrick. And I have said both times that those things happened, those
Yeah,
trades happened, that I hated them.
Yeah,
and I knew, and I looked at my wife in the car when that trade bell came up and the Tennessee Titans traded up and we're driving to her parents' house. I looked at my wife and I go, yes. And she goes, what? And I go, they're trading for Amon-Ra St. Brown. They traded up to get him. No doubt in my mind that is who they're going to get. He is a J-Rob guy. They block. He's physical.
He really
great,
is.
reliable wide receiver. That's the guy.
He's a 5-star kid in high school and college. Like, he's been great his whole life.
They said Des Fitzpatrick, and I had to research when I got home to find out who Des Fitzpatrick was, because he wasn't even close to being a 4th-round draft pick, much less a 7th-round draft pick. And here's the thing. The next stage of all of this is what's next, besides, obviously the GM. But how much weight is going to be given to the Senior Bowl now? Like, Des Fitzpatrick got drafted because Jon Robinson saw him at the Senior Bowl in a COVID year. What about undervaluing the importance of wide receivers? We know that Mike Vrabel has said that passer rating, no turnovers, winning the trenches is basically how you win games.
Priority.
Well, to get passer rating, you have to have good wide receivers. So maybe he's going to value wide receivers a little bit more. Are blocking skills going to be the number one priority at the top? Or are you going to draft playmakers and teach them to block? Being okay with adding players coming off major injuries. That's something that J-Rob's always been okay with. Whether it's signing, drafting, it doesn't matter. Does that go out the window? You actually get healthy people.
It's why I'm rooting for Odell Beckham to be the first thing the new GM does. That's not a cornerback from like wherever the hell he's from. Just because it would people's brains would explode. So I do want to look forward a little bit on this, because again, we sort of understand the stakes here. This is all on Vrabel now. They're all not that it shouldn't be, but it is, and that's the way it should be. I want to ask you one question, and my brother-in-law brought this up to me during all of the stuff that was unfolding on Tuesday, and I was driving him to the airport, and he's a huge Titans fan, and he listens to the show. He loves you. Not the other host he's not a huge fan of, but he loves you. And he says, do you think Mike Vrabel is cerebral? And my response was like, how are we defining that in football terms? Because he is incredibly knowledgeable about the rule book, like just off the charts knowledgeable about the game. He's incredibly psychologically evolved as a teacher. I think he's really evolved that way, and how to lead people and pull things out of people and develop people. I think he's really great at that. But we sort of know famously that he's not big into the analytics. He's got a little old school to his game. Do you think Mike Vrabel is a cerebral head football coach?
And did he define it solely on analytics, or did he just kind of leave it open?
No, he sort of just left it open.
Well, I agree with everything you say, and I am going to throw something out there that it's, I don't know if I was talking to Josh about this or Kyle Fulton on Twitter, but someone asked, what gives you hope that Vrabel is going to open up analytics? Because me and Mike had talked about that maybe this could be a little nudge towards analytics, right? Now, we know that Mike Vrabel has kind of said, pretty much kind of dismissed analytics, but we also know that Stretch is in his ear, and Stretch is a big analytics guy, right? The fourth down decisions and all that kind of stuff is coming from Stretch. And guess who is top 10 in success rate and making the correct decision among NFL coaches on 4th down? Mike Vrabel. So I say this, Jon Robinson has been way more of a harsh critic towards analytics in the public when he has spoken.
Yeah.
And he called it he went back to 1970s and all this shit. Like he went back. Now I know that Mike Vrabel has said that for 25 years, you win this way: passer rating, no turnovers, win the trenches, run game, all that kind of stuff. Whatever his formula is. That formula is based in analytics, guys. I know that it sounds very prehistoric, but that is based in analytics. Yeah. And that is something, I'm not saying they're going to have a full-blown analytics department with 15 people cranking out computers and all that. I do think that if Stretch gets the GM position, I do think that there's going to be a little bit more analytics, but we'll never really know. Isn't that the thing, though? We'll never really know how far into analytics they ever go, because this is a tight-lipped organization. I do think he's cerebral, and I do think he's smart enough to know what they need to do to get that Lombardi trophy.
Yes, and I think that's the right answer, is that he knows that. I think he's smart enough to know that analytics are part of his decision-making, which I think is the right amount. Like, analytics should just be a part. It shouldn't be the only thing. It shouldn't be nothing. It should be a part of your decision making. Sometimes when to go for it and what play to call is completely gut instinct. I am curious. I'd like to know how much of like the X's and O's scheme on defense is Mike Vrabel personally responsible for designing and implementing, or is it more mostly Shane Bowen and his position coaches bringing, like, he has sort of like, front multiplicity and coverage consistency or whatever. Like, he's got his core philosophies, and then he wants his coaches to then go and draw plays specifically to execute things. And he said this on offense. He's like, yeah, I have some mild input during games. I might want to go this direction on this drive or that direction on this drive. He kind of does it as a CEO up at the top. So I just was curious what your answer would be to that question, because I think it's far more gray area than Mike Vrabel lets on. I think he's
involved in everything now,
and he's very smart.
The minutia details and stuff like that, where, well, I'm going to draw this play, and this guy's running this route in this particular play, and we're calling it Spider X, Y Banana, Memphis Tigers, Evanescence, whatever.
Evanescence.
Yeah, got a guy right here. I was,
I saw
that. But like, that's all the coordinator's stuff. The guy that comes in and says, okay, you see how the Eagles are playing this kind of defense. This is how we need to attack them. You guys got to come up with the game plan here. Right. I want to get this guy involved. Let's get this guy involved. Let's get this guy out of that position, move him over here. Let's try these things. That is Mike Vrabel. Now, does that mean, to me, Mike Vrabel has said all year, we've kind of just shrugged it off, right? And you talked about this earlier about the contention. We've kind of just shrugged it off. But do you remember, and it was brought up to him, and he's like, you're going to have to show me where I said that. And I almost wrote a whole article going back on Twitter and finding everything he said.
Oh, yeah.
I almost did that. But he essentially told Ed Werder, what the fuck do you expect us to do? Who the fuck were we going to throw it to? And he's told reporters on press conferences here in Nashville, what do you guys don't get? This is how we have to win. And I'm not saying this team is going to become like the fucking St. Louis Rams back in the day, or even the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
But they want to be more explosives, right? I mean, his thing is about X plays. You got to generate a lot of X plays on offense and limit X plays on defense. And they can't generate a lot of X plays on offense. And how they're going to do that is very important for this team to succeed. And I know everybody's like, well, if you hate how much they run the ball now, they're going to run the ball even more. Maybe they will the rest of the way this year, because they don't really have a lot of options right now in the passing game. But I think you're going to see a totally different offense next year. Now, we have seen
with Malik Willis running it.
No. Listen, and this goes to this question from Brian. But now moving forward, but how do you unfuck the overpayment of Tannehill, the overpayment with Bud Dupree, fix the O-line problem, blah blah blah. Look, this is not that hard, guys. And I say this in all, because someone asked this question yesterday. How you can't, because someone said you can't keep Simmons, Tannehill, and AJ Brown. That's why they let AJ Brown go. Well, no, you can. Like, trust me, you can do it all. You release Bud Dupree, save you $9.3 million. You release Robert Woods, save you $12 million. Release Zach Cunningham, $9.2 million. Release Taylor Lewan.
Cunningham's done.
Yeah. Release Taylor Lewan, $14.8 million. Release Jamarco Jones. I just threw him in there because he's a loser. You save $1.3 million. That gets you to $27 million and $27.4 million in cap space right off the bat. And those are obvious cuts that you can go ahead and do. Then you extend Ryan Tannehill. I know that's what nobody wants to see, but Ryan Tannehill's at least sticking around for at least 2 more seasons, more than likely. And when you extend him, you'll probably save anywhere from $10 to $20 million in cap space in 2023. Now, in doing that, you're talking, and then the cap raises. So you're talking about anywhere from $47 to $50 million in cap space.
Okay.
That fixes everything for this team.
Yeah.
And it makes it so much easier for the GM. And I am telling you guys right now that Mike Vrabel is tired of having to answer the question, why don't you guys pass the ball?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's going to turn into Josh Allen and get all this other stuff. It's going to be a passing attack similar to 2019 and 2020, where you had Corey Davis and you had A.J. Brown and you had Derrick Henry and you had a good offensive line and you had Ryan Tannehill.
Look, the Titans want to win a Super Bowl. That is very clear. There are a couple of big things that have to happen for the Titans to likely win a Super Bowl. The reality is they didn't trust Jon Robinson to do those things, which is probably draft a franchise quarterback. I'm not doing this in any particular order here. Probably draft or find a franchise quarterback for the next 15 years, completely overhaul the offensive line. Like, there's just certain rework Jeffrey Simmons' contract, like give him the extension. Like, there's just things. There are big steps that are coming for this organization that they just didn't trust Jon Robinson to make. And that's it. Like, that's it. It's not more complicated than that. It is what it is. And now the next person is going to be responsible for all of this, and we'll find out how much Mike Vrabel is involved in those processes.
He'll be 100% involved.
Right,
right. To be honest, you got to remember that unless they're going totally outside the box, like totally outside the box with a GM candidate that Mike Vrabel has no experience with, it's going to be someone that works with and knows Jon Robinson. Mike Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel. It's going to be someone that he knows and he trusts. So it's going to be someone that can draft talent and is simpatico with Mike Vrabel. One of the guys that I put out on a list of external candidates was John Carr, who crossed paths with Mike Vrabel and the Houston Texans. And he is currently the director of scouting and director of player personnel over at the New York Jets. He is
that's a good draft.
Director.
That's a good draft picks.
Yeah. Outside of Zach Wilson. And we don't know where he stood on Zach Wilson. That'd be the first question I asked. Where was your input on Zach Wilson? Like, what did you think about Zach Wilson when you drafted him? Because you're eventually going to have a guy that can draft you the quarterback of the future.
Yep.
This guy I really like. And I watched an interview this morning of him, and I wish I would have watched it and put it in my article. But I watched an interview with him, and he said, I sat down when I first got hired as director of college scouting for the Jets. I sat down with every coach and every staff member. We're talking every assistant, everything. And I learned what they're looking for in a player. And I think what has happened is that Jon Robinson and Mike Vrabel had a lot of overlap as far as what they were looking for in a player. Yes. But based on the draft picks of some of the guys that Jon Robinson has brought in, traded for, and signed, I think there was a lot of stuff where they did not meet eye to eye on. And I think whoever this guy is going to have to be on the same page. And that's why I think it's going to be someone he's familiar with, either in-house or someone that he's familiar with external. But I'd be happy if it's someone from a team that he has no experience with Mike Vrabel's picked him. Like, Mike Vrabel has to be a unanimous decision between Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams-Strunk, in my opinion. Can I just be Amy Adams-Strunk overruling Mike Vrabel?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I do think the timing, and I know Mike Herndon on y'all show said this is all about ramping up the time to scout with players and to talk to players. And I guess to me, because again, this is largely unprecedented in the modern NFL, has not happened before Christmas since 2000. This is very unusual. It's obviously, the Philadelphia situation and the owner's box and the A.J. Brown trade and all that other stuff is just the straw that breaks the camel's back, in my opinion, after years of sort of, again, degraded trust in his decision-making. I do find it interesting. Like, I don't think the Titans scouting staff is in a better situation today to go scout players than they were without Jon Robinson. I don't think they're a better situation to win games today, unless your point about like office place dynamics is like that important, which maybe it is. I do think if they think they've got their guy in-house, because there's two guys, the guy Ryan Cowden, of course, and then Monty Ossenfort, who's a commodity on the GM world, and then of course Stretch. If they think that those three guys can be in charge of personnel, then okay, I'm not as worried about it. They don't have to build their entire scouting department or whatever. I think those three guys.
I think whoever. I'll just be honest. I think whoever comes in needs to clean house in the scouting department, unless just Jon Robinson just really just ignored all the work they did and made his own choices at the end of the day, because the scouting department sucks. From an objective view that we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, I think you could say these last drafts, the majority of the majority of the people that are there, they're kind of stinky.
Ironically, 2022 notwithstanding, could be a bunch of good players in that draft class. But you're right. We don't know. Just like we don't know exactly if Amy picked up the phone and said, Mike, look, do we make the move on Jon Robinson or not? And then Mike says, yes, we got to do it. I need more of this, and this, and this, whatever. Like, we're never going to know about that conversation if it did or didn't happen. Maybe. We're not going to really know. Like, did the entire scouting department say, John, I don't think we should take Isaiah Wilson? And he just said, screw you guys.
Yeah, we really don't know.
It's just hard to know. It's hard to know.
I'll say this. Let me do two things real quick because I know we got to get where you got like 5 minutes left. We still got the fucking Jaguars and Heisman.
Yeah, look, listen, here's the Heisman Talk. By the way, Kingston Group Pharmacy, 2 great sponsors. Go check them out. Awesome businesses, locally owned and operated in Nashville, serving you folks. So go eat at Pharmacy. And if you need something with your house, go to the Kingston Group. Here's all you need to know about the Heisman conversation. Hendon Hooker should have been a finalist, and I'll tell you my vote on Monday. There you go.
I like it. And I agree with you that he should have been a finalist. And even if he's like number 5 by like 3 votes, he should just fly him out there. Okay, anyway. 2 things.
Heisman Talk done.
Stretch. This idea that he can't do the GM job because he's never scouted before, I think it's kind of bullcrap. I mean, there's 2 reasons for it. One, he's been director of football operations for 2 colleges where he has to go out and recruit and scout high school football players. Okay, so that's one. And he's done that for 4 years. And I know college is on a different level and all that kind of stuff. But
same skills. It's the same skills. It's the same skills. Yeah.
2, we don't know exactly what he's been doing this last 5 years when Vrabel goes down to pro days, when Vrabel goes down to combines, when Vrabel goes down to the Senior Bowl. What is Stretch's job? We know he's the assistant to the head coach, and he's got some fancy title as well on top of that. But he's right there, right? So what is he learning? What is he picking up on? What is he doing with Jon Robinson? Is he the facilitator between Jon Robinson and Mike Vrabel? And he's doing stuff with Jon Robinson and coming over here. We don't know. Third, John Lynch, anybody? Oh, John Elway, anybody? Both GMs that were former players that had no experience or just as much experience, because John Elway was, I think it was the Colorado Crush football operations CEO guy before he became, which is Arena Football, before he became GM of the Broncos. Both guys did not have any scouting background.
Are you calling John Elway a great general manager?
No, I'm just saying, well, he got Super Bowl, didn't he?
I mean, I don't know. He drafted a lot of shitty players.
He drafted a lot of good players.
He just traded.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying you don't have to have experience. So you got John Lynch is on the other side. You're totally ignoring John Lynch, who is
Lynch is great. I'm all in on him.
Why can't Stretch, who actually has experience that everybody's wanting to ignore? But I want to throw something out there, and I think I haven't thought about this. And Brian, who has been an all-star in the chat today, put this out.
Way to go, Brian. Is Brian number 1?
Jim Schwartz. I thought that's a little interesting. What if Jim Schwartz, that it's a possibility. Now, I'm not saying it's like a high possibility or there's some conspiracy theory that Jim Schwartz was brought in with the promise of being a general manager and thing. But there is a guy who has scouted players, maybe not in the sense of how other people scout players, but he's been a head coach. He's been a defensive coordinator. So he's been assistant. He's been in the league a long time. He has ties to this franchise, and he's been kind of just chilling back there.
So I don't hate it.
Interesting name to throw out there just among all the internal candidates that nobody's talked about. So kudos to you, Brian Spivey. I'm probably going to, or Spivey, I'm probably going to steal that here soon.
I don't hate it, but if you have John Stryker, who is regarded by almost everyone as a future general manager, and you have another guy, Monty O, who is getting interviews fairly routinely the last couple of years, right, to be a general manager. I feel like those are your top 2 candidates. Yeah. And you got a guy right now in Ryan Cowden who's already doing the job currently.
Which I thought was interesting that he was at a press conference right next to Jon Robinson. So you would think that he was the right-hand man for Jon Robinson. And he's the guy that Vrabel and Amy picked to be interim GM, because I'm definitely throwing it out there that Vrabel and Amy picked the interim GM. And I love that he got rid of Torrey Carter and other people that were underperforming for this team
right away. Yeah, here's what I would say. I don't think Ryan Cowden has a chance to be to get the job, but the reason you pick him is because A, you're probably not going to hire him, and B, and there's a counter argument to this because you want to give him a trial run, and that's the counter argument. But you want things to stay as stable as possible in the shortest of short term, right? 5 games, playoffs. You want to keep it stable. You don't want things to be disrupted so much so that the whole organization is like in chaos.
Right.
So you have a guy who sort of knows both worlds, right? Vrabel and Robinson, and he can play that role. And then again, you go on and you move on and you evaluate the other 2 guys in the organization that feel more like real candidates for whatever reason, right? So I don't know, man. It's a wild week. It's completely franchise defining. It is like the next 4 to 6 years of Titans football have now been changed forever.
Yeah,
permanently changed forever.
I really thought he was going to get another year to try.
I agree.
Line. Now, I didn't think he was going to live out his contract or anything. I mean, I had faith that he could do the job, but obviously behind closed doors, things soured that we are not privy to. And Vrabel and Amy Adams Strunk both agree that to get to that next level, to get to that Super Bowl, they need someone else, and they already have someone else in mind. That's what I think. I
tend to
this
agree
GM search is going to be almost very Mike Malarkian in how much of a farce it is, because they know who their GM is. They're going to interview some people, and unless someone completely wows them, they got their guy already.
And again, just to remind everybody, Vrabel and Robinson, as of February, extended the exact same number of years on their contracts together in lockstep. And just for it to have soured since February,
a lot of culmination of things.
Yep.
Like, it's not just AJ Brown trade. It's the offensive line. It's probably the way that they're scouting, the players that they're choosing, the free agent decisions. It's probably a lot of different things that Vrabel probably had say in. But he didn't have – Jon Robinson did probably the opposite, a lot of what he wanted.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things that, he did get. He got Jadeveon Clowney, right? And, like, he got Jonathan Joseph. He got certain guys that you could tell were Vrabel guys. This should spell the end of Jeff Swaim, Cody Hollister, Mason Kinsey, and Dennis Staley.
You keep saying, I heard you say that on F-Words, like, these are all J-Rob guys. I'm like, every player on the team is technically a J-Rob guy. Like, every single one
Mason
of them.
Kinsey went to the same college or same high school or whatever they fucking went to.
Well, and
like, some of these guys, you just kind of know that when Mike Vrabel said, hey, I'm re-signing or Jon Robinson said, hey, I'm re-signing Jeff Swaim, and Mike's like, okay. And then he sees that's for $3 million, and then he basically has saddled him with no other blocking tied in, that Mike Vrabel's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Jeff Swaim is the real reason he got fired.
Two things can be true, and I've kind of come around on this. 2 things can be true. Jon Robinson is responsible for where the Titans organization is today as a successful, winning, relevant division championship franchise. That is Jon Robinson's, gets credit for that. There's no question about it. And also, the other thing can be true, that they are making a huge risky decision to shoot for the stars, go for a Super Bowl championship, and do better than what Jon Robinson has done the last few seasons. All these things can be true. And this is what makes sports so fun and so great, is we have no effing clue whether or not this is the right move or a terrible move. We can all agree that in hindsight, it'll always be 2020, but we just don't know. We just don't know what's going to happen. And anyone who does, they don't know. They don't know if it's going to work or not, because it's sports, man. It's what makes it so fun. You guys were great in the chat, by the way. Just phenomenal job. All you guys being involved. We appreciate all you guys listening, rating, reviewing. Kingston Group Pharmacy for supporting us. Go check out local business or whatever. Do you want to spend like a minute on the Jaguars game?
Yeah, here's the thing is that I'm not sure if Trevor Lawrence is going to play, and you should be rooting for Trevor Lawrence to play because he is hobbling and everything, but you need one of Christian Fulton or Trey Avery. You cannot afford to miss both of those guys, and you really can't afford to have David Long miss at all.
A sentence I did not expect to hear on the show today. You can't afford to miss Trey Avery.
Well, if you're missing Christian Fulton, you have to have at least Trey Avery, right? I mean, you can't miss both of them, especially when you're going up against. And I don't have faith in Trey Avery to cover Christian Kirk or to cover Zay Jones, but you're going to need him to if Christian Fulton's gone. So the big thing this week is to pay attention to, obviously, the injury report. The injury report today, later today on Thursday. Probably going to have a lot of rest days, a lot of guys on rest. Jeffrey Simmons was limited on Wednesday. Probably going to rest today. Probably maybe even rest Friday. But Friday's the big injury report. You want to see if maybe Treylon Burks was able to put in a practice today. Because remember, Treylon Burks has to go limited practice, full practice, clear a medical check. So, and the medical check has to be the next day. So if he does not limited practice today, and it goes from Saturday to Saturday, it's really slim. It's probably slim anyway. Same with Trey Avery, popped up with concussion. So you got to be really rooting for Racey McMath, Christian Fulton, and David Long, because this team can still beat the Jaguars even without Treylon Burks and even without Trey Avery. They could definitely beat this team. I'm not scared. And even really, if all those guys are gone, Mike Vrabel's not losing a game coming off the week that, first off, he's already lost 2, and that he already lost embarrassing enough to the Eagles, the former wide receiver, and the week that they fired the GM. They ain't fucking losing this game.
No, I tend to agree with you. I would be fascinated to know how Jon Robinson will be watching the Titans game on Sunday. And if they do lose, man, what a celebration that guy's going to have.
If they do lose, it's because he didn't provide enough depth. So we can at least point to Jon Robinson for that loss.
Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving. There's no question about that. Kingston Group right there, of course. We got the pharmacy right there. 2 locally owned businesses. Pharmacy, of course, for great burgers and beer and brats and hang time. You just go have some great lunch, go have some great dinner. You got the Kingston Group, of course. Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. Make sure you check them out if you're going to make any big decisions about your house. Don't do it until you talk to the Kingston Group before you spend any money on any renovations or buying or selling a house. You need some questions answered, just talk to them. They will take care of you. And I think that's about it. Check out the F Words Pod. Great conversation with you and Mike Herndon. If you want more SEC and Heisman Trophy talk and SEC Championship and playoff talk, which we didn't do any of today, of course, make sure you check out Fringe Element Podcast. We've got all kinds of great stuff up there on the Heisman ballot. We'll be back on Monday. Everybody have a great weekend. Man, what a wild
week. I almost drove off the road when I heard it on the radio.
What a wild week. Man, thank you guys for hanging out with us. All the great comments, man. We really appreciate you guys. Rate, review, subscribe, share the product, share us on Twitter. Tell somebody about the show. That's how we grow it, man. It's because of you guys out there listening and paying attention, and we really, really appreciate it. And Brian says he just found us today. We're great. Thank you. And top commenter of the day, too.
Top commenter of the day.
This is what happens. We're fine scouting listeners. We're really good at scouting. No problem. Zach, where can people find you real quickly here?
Follow me on @FWordsPod. You can find all my written work, which I have articles out today, and I'll have an article out Saturday. And I'm also doing the injury reports for Broadway Sports Media. I'm trying to give you a little bit of analysis on the injury reports instead of these loser websites that just throw it up and just say, "Oh, well, I'm just going to repeat everything that's on here." A little bit of analysis on there.
I want extra analysis on every groin injury on the Titans roster.
I may start getting into like research on groin injuries and say, well, if it's a groin tear part, 3.0 or something, and then or if you tore this muscle in the groin, or if this is a little bit of a strain, get into
some scar tissue down there. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. For Zach, I am Braden. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you on Monday, 1:00, right here on A Football Show.